The bar is always high because where do we want to go? We want to go up toward the light and really become children of the light. Good morning. Our friend Bharat Cornell has written a wonderful book that I refer to, I go back to every once in a while. It's called Om, the Message of Love, something like that. And in it, he tells a story about Bharat Cornell is a naturalist, and he's part of our Ananda community, and he's internationally known. He's traveled the world teaching his way of helping people to really deeply tune into nature and bring the spirit into themselves and enjoy the world in that way. So he tells the story of a trip he took to Massachusetts, and he was, in fact, writing this book at the time, and the man told him that as a very small child, he heard the sound of Om constantly. And whenever he felt strife or discouragement in his family, he wanted to say, "Don't worry, Om is here." But he had no speech. He was too young. He hadn't learned how to talk. I mean, that story is just exactly what we're talking about today. We're talking about the fact that we know so much more than we would ever imagine we know. And yet the world captures us. Our past not knowing captures us, our past karma, and we live through another lifetime. It would be so lovely to understand how much of that awareness that man was able to hold on to. But just that little voice, that little baby voice unable to speak, "Don't worry, Om is here." We want to hear that every day. And what that is that's the vibration of the highest consciousness. That's the vibration that lifts us into who we truly are. So this reading this morning is full of riddles. There's a lot of up and down and which way here. A great master, of course, lives simultaneously in the manifested world as well as beyond in the Supreme Spirit. We need to remember that is our birthright. Heaven, higher consciousness, higher awareness is our birthright. This is who we are. And so what's happening here? How can we remember? We live in the consciousness that is dictated by our feelings, our emotions, our thoughts, our body aches and pains. And that takes us on a roller coaster of life. And we listen to that state of consciousness. We listen to those voices who said, this is the only thing that's real. And we have, gratefully, scientists now who are studying all aspects of the material plane, and Einstein, bless his heart, I can't help mentioning him, really tuned in to the ultimate, that this material world is an illusion. It's motion, but it's motion that is going so fast that it creates the illusion of separateness. It creates the illusion of solidity. It creates the illusion of reality. And so it takes more to get beyond that. But I was also thinking yesterday that this world is so beautiful, and we especially tune into that in the spring. It is so gorgeous, and people on Facebook send around these amazing pictures of sunsets. And we have nivrittis among us who go to the top of mountains and really commune with God there. And so this world has the enticements, and we want to be able to appreciate it from the highest octave. You know, Swami tells the story of someone standing with him and looking at a beautiful sunset. And the fellow felt the frustration, if only I could feel it. He knew there was something more to be received, and yet he couldn't quite tune into that. So this reading is telling us that we have come from higher consciousness, and we have the ability, if we pursue self-control, we have the ability to tune into our highest reality. So, you know, from a world that is spinning, we want to tune in to stillness. This is where God is. God is in the stillness. We don't want to spin anymore through our senses. We want to rest. We want to come to rest. And the great joy is that the beauty and the rest are within us. It's how we're made. It's the name of God's game, is stillness within, joy within. It's all available right here. And that takes discipline because we've spent so much time thinking it's somewhere else, and we've gotten involved in lots of things that weren't quite the doorway to that stillness. And so we have to work those things through. I've told this story before, but I have another look at it, and I realized how important it was. There was a time when my father became concerned about my involvement with Ananda, and that was when I moved into a mansion in San Francisco with 25 others. And there was rent to pay and all of this, and that's where his fatherly concern came up. How is this going to work out if that man from Scarsdale, Swami Kriyananda, this doesn't work for him? And Swami, I showed him the letter. I thought, I think I'll show Swami this and see what his reflections are, how I should respond perhaps. And he said, I want you to sit down and tell your father how you got here and be serious about it. Don't just cast it off, you know. And that was a very, very important moment, because that's when, for me, the memory kicked in. And memory is so very important in understanding how we become aware and begin to live within that child of light that we all are. As I wrote my letter, I remembered a feeling from my very early childhood of how life might be, how people might relate to each other, the love there could be, the possibility of kindness and consideration and concern. Many of my childhood imaginative stories and dreams, which I always shared with my twin sister, were about taking care of other people and having miracles happen in other people's lives. So I tuned back into some of this, and I told my father that Ananda was inevitable for me. It came right out of my childhood. And so this is where I was at home. I don't know what he responded to that letter. He passed away after that letter was sent. I know he received it, but I don't know what his response was. But why I tell it is because memory is how we get back in touch with being a child of light. And although the game that God has put in front of us takes a long time, eventually that memory will peek through. And at that point, we will try very seriously to recognize ourselves in that guise as children of light. You know, some people come into this world, and I've heard this from a good many, even when they're very young, they say, I don't belong here. And there's, you know, in the world of metaphysics, there's a lot of thinking about, well, maybe you came from another planet. And so in the years that I took charge of East West in the 80s, that was one of the big things. There were people from Pleiades and all of that. I don't want to make fun of it, although I tend to. But I think, again, that they don't belong here because that's the truth of it. But it's a mix. It's a real mix. The beauty and the exquisite aspects of this world hold us to the job of working through all of the ways in which we had forgotten that we were children of light. So there is a sense that we belong somewhere else. But God has given us a very beautiful world in which to work out all of our karma. So we need to be grateful on both sides. You know, I can definitely tend to just throw away the material world. That's not fair. That's not fair. Here's where we do the job, and it's beautiful. And this time of year, it's especially beautiful. And we can see God in everything. And if you listen to Swami's songs, they're always full of the reference of nature. Your joy shines in everything. So it's a wonderful platform for us to learn who we really are. So God wants us not to be caught in all the other aspects that life offers, but He wants us to be with Him completely. And when we have moments of feeling that we are completely united with God, there is a great joy that wells up. And that spills over into your experience on this plane. And that's helpful to everyone on this plane when there are many, many, many who have recognized that their true love is God, their true love is that stillness. Their true love, therefore, is serving others and helping others to recognize their oneness. And so it really all works out. And we're no longer defined by our delusive, egoic nature. We're defined by our higher nature. And the ego gives us a rip-roaring challenge, and we have to deal with that. Swamiji, when he established Crystal Hermitage, his home, he wanted around that home to be a garden. And he had an image of a garden that would attract a lot of people. Because there were two things working there. There was the beauty of his home, and it's the community center of Ananda Village in Nevada City, California. But there was also the way in which the glory of nature and the vibration of those living in the higher consciousness could touch others. And it's just been extraordinary what the Tulip Garden has provided. When I went to see it 2 years ago, I hadn't seen it. And I just thought of Swamiji the whole time, because of course it's right outside his little apartment part of Crystal Hermitage, and it's glorious, and people come by the thousands to see the tulip garden at Ananda Village, because that's what God has given us, a world of nature that reflects his consciousness, that reflects his joy, that reflects his love and his light. And I am sure there are many who visit who just don't quite know what's going on, but they come back every year. They come back every year. It's glorious. And so the two work together. This is more, I'm talking to myself actually. The two worlds work together, and we're a part of both, and we're wanting to become completely aware of who we are and who we love and why we love. Let's see where I want to go. I want to speak about Jyotisha and his art a little bit. We are going to be having a visit from him in June, and we will have an art show of his, and he's done, I don't know how this man does it. He travels the world, he oversees the work of Ananda worldwide, and he still paints. And he described to us last year when he was here that when you look at his paintings, you don't necessarily see the colors of nature. Well, then what do you see? Because he does nature paintings. He does them in the hues of the astral plane, his memory of being on a higher plane. And he brings that and puts that with nature. And so you look at his paintings and you know it's somewhere else, but perhaps you remember where that is. So we'll have an opportunity to see his paintings the weekend that they're here, June 1st. So how do we make this transition? And we all know these things, but so if God has placed us in a beautiful world that grabs our attention and we think this is the it when it isn't, how do we eventually begin to recognize that we're children of light? Well, everything needs to move upward. Everything in us needs to ascend. And that is why all of the yoga postures and the postures for meditation and the suggestions of how to take our spiritual practice into our daily life have to do with raising our energy. And I remember the first time that it was suggested that whenever we come to a standstill, like at a traffic light crossing a road, we put our energy at the spiritual eye. Now, we pay attention to the red and green lights, but our consciousness is at the spiritual eye, that we look up when we walk through the world, that we put a smile on our face perhaps when we meditate, all in the hopes that we will remember who we are and where we came from. Because the breath traveling up in the body is what will link us to that higher nature which is within us, which will link us to the spirit, the children of light that we truly are. And there's such a sweet, sweet story. I don't know where it comes from, but it's been around a while. The story of the hunter. And he was hunting birds. He was just knocking them off, just having a great old time with his hobby. And then the birds just kind of knew that this guy with a rifle, that they weren't going to be anywhere near him. So he stopped having something to shoot at. And one day he saw a saint standing in the meadow, arms upraised like this, and little birds, say it's St. Francis, why not? Little birds were landing on his arms. And the guy goes, hey, there's a trick I could use. So he begins the practice of standing there with his arms upraised. And eventually, yes, the birds do land. But what's going on with him? His whole energy is moving upward. His whole consciousness is changing. And the story goes that he became a saint through that practice. So Swami Kriyananda, our founder, sets the bar really high, as did Master, his guru and our guru, for our behavior along the pathway to becoming aware that we're children of light. The bar is high in terms of the advice we are given when we begin to see others doing things we don't approve of. The bar is always high because where do we want to go? We want to go up toward the light and really become children of the light. Thank you. And whispers. Many doors opened before me at the dawn of thy coming. O Lord, the very earth shone with life when thou camest. The very ground on which I stood thrilled me because of thee. Everywhere dumb matter spoke to me, spirit resurrected by thy touch. All the living things swayed in the incense breeze of thy approach, hinting at thy perfume of bliss. The sanctuary of omnipresence was long hidden by the darkness of my indifference. Now on the revealed courtyard of thy temple, I find thy fountain of joy gaily bubbling. With uplifted palms, palm cups of craving, I catch and drink from the vital waters of thy solace, Lord. I know now that I shall thirst nevermore.
Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of